Hi. No, you're still behind.
Hi, I'm back.
Nice to see you again.
You too. Hello, Ashley. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
there we go.
Yeah,
Much
there we go.
better.
Much better. So basically, we had some technical difficulties, as always when you plan for these things. But it's very chill, Ash. It's like we're just hanging out. It's just us catching up. So there's no it's not like the pressure to, speak
Sit
straight
down with
away and
that.
stuff. Yeah. It's literally just two people like chatting and forgetting that there's a camera. It's like a video call. That's all it is.
Cool.
You know? How are
Amazing.
you doing, man?
Very good. Very good. And you?
So far, so good. Yeah, it's been a crazy year. Changed jobs,
Yes.
changed location, changed provinces. It's been a wild ride, to be honest.
It's good though. It's good. All good changes.
Yeah. It's so nice to catch up, man. I mean, it's been so long. I think the last time we chatted was probably way back in varsity. And then I think we reconnected last year sometime,
Yes.
and just started, just
Yes.
chatting and finding out about each other. I had seen that you've gone on like a completely new direction in life and so much had changed. And I was just intrigued and interested, about this stuff because I think at the
Yeah.
time I was also going through kind of this whole change on how to manage my health and how to have a better perspective on life. So it was very interesting. It was very interesting.
Yeah. A lot has changed since our undergrad and studying certain BSc subjects that
And that's where we first met.
very different to what we're doing now. Yes, yeah. So it's very different to what we're doing at this time. So it's very
Yeah.
cool.
And
It's very
you
cool.
did the sports science, right? BSc sports science.
Yes.
Because that's where we met. I think
Yeah.
we met in anatomy or physiology or one of those classes.
Yeah, and I think we had chemistry together. That was the worst class ever.
Dude, she always used to have this thing, you must crack the code. Remember that lady? Was it Mrs. Malan or
Yes,
something?
yes, yes.
Yeah, I think I went to very
Yeah.
few of those classes. Somehow managed to pass. When I look back, I'm like, I actually don't know how I managed to pass because
No,
I used to get so bored.
yeah, there was definitely divine intervention that pushed us through a lot of that stuff.
No, absolutely. So let's take it
Yeah,
back, right? Let's find out who Ashley is.
yeah,
If you don't mind taking it back, like growing up, like who you are, because I think it's important. The one thing I like to do with these is kind of trace the journey. It's a nice thing for everyone who's been on that they reflect on where they were and how they got to where they
yes.
are, and then we'll discuss something that I'm very fascinated about, which is what you currently do. So yeah, if you don't mind, just a little breakdown of like growing up, your life, like how you got here.
Yeah, sure. It's actually so interesting that, as we booked to have this video call, I went home and had dinner with my father on Friday, Friday evening, and it was very interesting for me to remember a lot of the feelings of how I used to feel when I was younger and growing up.
Yeah.
So I think it was quite appropriate that happened, and then today we're having this talk. Yeah, so growing up was quite challenging for me. I spent a lot of time alone. I think my parents, they themselves were going through a lot of their own stuff, and as an adult now, I can understand, you know, adult things that they were dealing with. They themselves had a very tumultuous relationship that was had a huge amount of passion, but when passion can get over the top, can become quite violent. So there was a lot of dealing with that. And then my mom moved to Cape Town when I was 10, and I stayed with my dad. And yeah, he was running his own business and trying to raise me, and it was just him and I. So I think, that comes with a lot of its own challenges in itself. And my dad was very social, or is very social, and which means that he was out a lot. And that led me to be spending a lot of time at home on my own. Yeah, so I think that creates a lot of sense of, or it brings a lot of wounding to the heart space that's related to rejection, abandonment, unworthiness, shame, loneliness, grief. So that's very much how I spent a lot of my youth. And I think the way that I managed that was I was a very good athlete. And I ran. And I did track athletics, I think, since I was 6 years old. And that was definitely the way that helped me, stay grounded. And, obviously just kept running. And, I actually started running for RAL, I think when I was 12. So yeah, so it was RAL then, and I think we were the first ones to go when it converted into the University of Johannesburg. So it was very sort of destined that I just carried on running for them. And that's why I did the sports science, and that's why I continued to run competitively through varsity. And it was always just it was I suppose a healthier coping mechanism than booze and drugs and sex and rock and roll. So but it was very much my way of escaping, and I think it helped me a lot to stay connected to more of who I was, as opposed to substances that would probably take me out of myself. And then, but again, I suppose you're not really dealing with it, and you don't think anything's wrong because that's just your reality, and then as a capacity, I mean, obviously then once you start dating and finding yourself in relationships, you notice that those patterns of we're just going to say toxic love, like your understanding of love attracts certain partners that reflect similar
experiences,
similar energy, similar energies, and that's how then you still showing up the same way, which is it's just unhealthy the whole way through. So after I finished at UJ, I went on and became a personal trainer at Virgin Active. And that was a completely an amazing experience in itself. I was very young. I was passionate about exercise at that time because I saw it as a way to, it helped me survive so much trauma that, moving the body is obviously important. And having studied sports science, we understand the health benefits of movement. But when I was working there, it was very stressful for me because obviously growing up the way that I did, I also didn't realize how sensitive I was. And again, the running was just a way of numbing that out. And also, my intuition wasn't nurtured as a child. I was told a lot of the time that you can't say certain things like that, or you can't just not like people. Because that's
yes, you can.
I can, and I will. But also, so it's again, so growing up very sensitive, very intuitive, and just having that always snuffed out leads to a lot of suppressed emotions, suppressed feelings. And even though exercising and running is a form of connecting to the body, I was completely disconnected from my body.
So what would you do?
Then I went on to this.
So what would you do when
What
you
do you
were
mean?
like at home by yourself? Like how would you keep yourself busy before the running? Because and when you ran,
Um,
what would go through your mind? Like are you thinking about stuff, or was it a time to clear your head, or to it was a place of peace, or at the time would you think about everything happening around and try and purge?
so, sometimes, at home, what I would do, because I mean, we just missed the days of social media when we were growing up. So,
Thank God.
yeah, I would just, yeah, thank heavens, because I think that would have been way worse. But I would sit and listen to music over, like, just play music a lot. So that helped me. I would play games on the computer, like solitaire, because that's what we had.
Yeah.
Tetris,
Minesweeper.
yeah, those games. Um, and yeah, I did go through a stage where I started drinking a lot at home on my own,
Sure.
very, very young. Um, yeah, I think I remember once going on a school camp with a hangover. So
Ooh.
yeah, yeah, it was a real thing.
Yeah.
So but that never perpetuated into anything because it affected the running. So again, it was always
Mm.
how to be a better athlete. And yeah, I think now that I look back on it, I didn't really think about anything when I was running, because I did 200 and 400. So the race is very fast, it's very short. And all you've really got time to think about is just blasting off. So yeah, in that sense, all you're thinking about is how your body's feeling, keeping the rhythm going, just focusing on running well and efficiently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, one thing I definitely can realize now, looking back, is that how I grew up and what I'd suppressed and what I was going through emotionally definitely affected my big match temperament. I didn't, I had the talent to be really good, at running, but I didn't have the emotional capacity and the emotional support, and my mental health wasn't in the right place to
Mm.
actually be good enough. It's kind of like, I'll give you a perfect example. It would almost be like, I want to make friends with you before we race, and maybe not beat you, just so that you like me, just so that I'm accepted, just so that you
Wow.
don't reject me.
Sure.
So that was the
Wow.
mindset, and that doesn't make a great athlete.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's
Hmm.
that's like such a traumatizing thing to have to experience, because at the end of the day, you're
Yes.
using this mechanism to kind of feel free, and then you're at the same time you're still being crippled by the things you're dealing with at home and the psychological stuff. And
Yeah.
then you then have this crippling effect that brings on more mental strain, because now you're wondering why you're trying to not be the best at what you're doing.
Yes.
It's like this, everything's intertwined, like it just affects you. And we
Yeah.
think like, I can get on the pitch and it's a different ball game, but we take everything with us, right? Like every
What?
time
Yeah.
we step onto a cricket field or a football field or the track field,
Hmm.
like we're
Yeah.
taking a whole life with us, like, and that clearly, I mean, to try and get someone to like you, but was that trying to get someone to like you because of the loneliness, or was it more because you were told that you're meant to like people? You know what I mean? Like which
Yeah. I
part
think
was it?
I think it is a combination of things. I think it's more, because obviously when we look at loneliness, what a person is actually craving is connection.
Mm,
And so if I can make friends with you, then that's a connection. And if you like me, then I don't feel rejected. And if you like me, then I'm accepted, and I'm lovable, and I'm worthy of your friendship. So there's a whole paradigm and a whole dialogue that underlies that whole thing. But at the end of the day, you're trying to manipulate the situation to feel safe. and to feel loved.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's really hectic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like for someone to deal with that at such a young age, and to take that into an environment. And then, like at school, what were you like at school? Did that affect your ability at school? Were you very recluse, like, the kind of person who would just make friends?
I think, you see, I think also part of it, which is challenging when you experience is trauma, and there's many different degrees and variants of trauma, but I think you become quite dissociated. So I don't actually remember much about school. On a school level, I was the best athlete that they'd seen in 100 years. So that was cool. And I think that kind of at least gives you something.
Some purpose, yeah.
Yeah, and but I mean, I had friends at school, and I kind of just floated between different groups of people. I wasn't, I didn't feel like I was very much in a clique, because I was, able to flutter and adapt to all the different types of groups of people that are there. And I suppose that's an ability that comes with looking for acceptance and looking for love and looking for connection. Is you able to, almost like a chameleon, different groups, you're able to adapt to see how you feel here. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think a lot of people knew, some of my close friends from school knew how things were at home for me and how I was growing up, but not a lot of people did. Yeah. It's kind of like I put on the school hat and went to school and did the school thing and was the school's best athlete, and that's what it was, and carry on. And
sure.
So a lot of people say they hated school, but school was a break for me. It was a break from a different reality. Yeah,
that's unreal. And did you get bullied at school? Were you were cool, hey? So you didn't have
no,
like
I think I had the potential to be a bully, actually.
Because you were the super athletes, the damaged ones cause damage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hurt people. That's how it is. So I think I definitely had the potential to be a proper bitch. And
sure.
maybe sometimes I was or not. Yeah. But I think that was the main thing, is that not a lot of people really understood what was going on, and what I was dealing with on an emotional level, and how much stuff I was suppressing, how much, because also when you are suppressed, you are disconnecting, but at the same time searching for connection.
Yes.
So it's this constant inner conflict, that's going on the whole time emotionally. And also you don't realize it. So obviously, going along this journey that I have, obviously now at 35, I can look back and say these are some of the themes and patterns and behaviors, and I can see how these certain things play out. But when you're in the thick of it, you don't have any idea.
It's your norm, right? And you don't know any different. Like I remember when I went through varsity, like first of all, I'm like super like heavy right now and feeling a little choked up because I mean we were really close. We were very, very close, at a stage at varsity. And I didn't know all of this about your life, right? So I'm gonna get back to that because I've got something like that I want to ask you about. But it's crazy when you think back because, like you were saying, it's your norm. You don't know any different, right? It's like when I didn't even realize how severely depressed I was at varsity. I didn't until I went to a doctor and I went on meds, and then I realized, oh, is this what it's like to go through a normal day where you're not overthinking everything? And I found, like with you, when you're fighting for connections, when you're feeling disconnected, when you do have those connected moments, your mind is going because you're constantly you're trying to be in the moment, but now your brain's also trying to think, wait, am I building a connection here, or what am I doing? So even in the moment, your brain is still trying to figure out what's happening, and you're questioning. So that even allows you to feel a little disconnected when you go back and think about the meaning, and you think like, hey, so I was having this great time, but it could have been better, because while this was happening, I was sitting there thinking about, is this a connection? So it's literally it's this loop that just keeps going on and on, you know?
Yeah. And it's quite interesting because, like I said, you know, on Friday this week, I went home and I had dinner with my dad, and you could easily see how a few words, or even you know, certain body language, or now that I'm accepting my sensitivity, how I feel in that space can pull you back into a loop. You know, I felt it. I felt, oh, here I can go easily back into this space where I feel I'm not good enough, I'm ashamed, yeah, not worthy of connection or love, or you know, anything like that. You know, and it takes a lot to be able to witness yourself like that and to choose something different. You know, like, that's not my life. That was my life, and that's how I used to feel. But I've chosen something different. I've chosen a path that allows me to be more authentic and accept and validate myself as I am.
Sure.
So yeah. So it's a very, you know, it takes time.
It does. I mean, and that's the thing. You only realize that when you're taken out of that space, right? So you had school, which kind of like momentarily took you out of that space. But then I think this is the important thing I wanted to ask. When we went to varsity, right? Because now we're in a whole different space. So this was probably the first time you were completely broken out of that environment, right? So that's when you would have realized what's normal and what's not normal, or what's okay and what's not okay. But now, for me, listening to a lot of the stuff, right, that I didn't know, and maybe we did speak about it, maybe I suppressed about it, but I don't think we ever spoke about that stuff in childhood, right? To be honest, because I have a pretty good memory of stuff. But
I'm going to just add that I don't. So, you know, dissociation is real. Just going to say that.
Okay, cool. Which is good. I mean, like, my wife's also very good at that. She's very good at dissociating things and breaking away from memories, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that really got me feeling a little heavy in my chest when you were telling me this stuff is that, for people who don't know, right? So we went to varsity and we lived in res, on campus residence.
Yeah.
And what people may not know is that hazing or initiation and orientation was a very real thing for us, like an incredibly real thing for us.
Yeah. And it was tough.
And it was tough, right? Because it's not just like a week or two, like some people, certain universities. We had it for a year. Like, we went on a year-long thing of real, for the guys, a lot of physical activity, for the girls, a lot of mental kind of like activity, you know, and initiation. And, you know, from things like having to wear name tags and having to dress a certain way every day and having to greet people by these long ass titles, you know, having restrictions of not being allowed to drink, having curfews. It's like lockdown, basically. It was literally like being in lockdown at varsity, as if you had to compare to something. But it was more grueling because there wasn't like a set time. It was like you get woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning and you have to run outside for the guys, we had to run outside naked or go swim in that waterfall at UJ at 2 in the morning, you know, and it was, looking back, it was incredibly rewarding because it taught me about teamwork. It made me so tough. You know, it really hardened me up inside. Even if I've become softer as a person throughout the years, like, it deep down inside, when things get tough, I revert back to that kind of moment, right? So for you, moving into res, you're now surrounded by other people constantly after being by yourself. Even if you were at school,
Yeah.
you were able to kind of be around people, but go home and then you were alone. Now we're in res where
Yeah.
we're constantly surrounded by hundreds of people, lots
Mm.
of boys, lots of girls, lots of attention, and you're living in close proximity to a lot of people. And
Yes.
then you're receiving a lot of mental initiation and mental abuse in the sense that they were trying to toughen us up. So when you look back at coming out of home and what you went through, that must have been ridiculous. Like the fact that you stayed in res till the end and didn't chicken out
Yes.
is absolutely like newfound levels of respect. But for
Yeah, but
you,
definitely there were girls crying in the corridors during those first 3 weeks. Like it was hectic. And I mean, one stage we were only allowed to drink pink beverages.
yes, so
So
brutal fruit when you were, it was
yeah,
always like you had to drink a pink brutal fruit or you had to drink
yeah,
strawberry
or
milkshake. I remember
strawberry.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think again, I think there's part of it, like when you look at it like that and you question mental, you can probably say like that's not really ideal, an ideal environment. But I think also there's something about maybe having to be resilient from very young that kind of kicks in and like takes over. It's kind of like, well, I've survived a lot worse actually, so this is not too bad. And you're making new friends and you're making new connections. I think the one thing that I do remember being quite tough with res is I think they used to bully me quite a bit about, the school that I went to and the area that I grew up in, because I think a lot of the girls that were in the res that I was, that maybe came from, uh, other areas of Gauteng or other parts of the country, and I think they used to call me a snob because I grew up in Sandton
Oh,
and I went to a
yes.
private school, and so that was, I think that even my res nickname was some kind of Afrikaans snort corp or some shit like that. Yeah, so I mean, so it was dealing with that, and I think they also always used to get my surname wrong. So when they called register, they used to pronounce my surname, it's Tennier, and I think because it was very Afrikaans, they pronounced it Tennier, and I used to have to, I don't know why it used to grate me, but I used to correct them, and then they started doing it on purpose, so I think, but it wasn't so bad because, again, like you said, there was a lot of support. Everyone was going through it, so it wasn't personal. So I think that helped me a lot. And again, I think when you've been through a lot of trauma or you survived a lot of trauma, you've got resilience. And I think I possibly just pulled on that and just thought, there's nothing in res and nothing through those initiations that they put us through that's not worse than what I've seen or experienced. So yeah.
So you were basically better prepared than most people, because
probably, yes. Because I remember seeing, because a lot of the girls would cry in the corridors or cry after certain things, like if we had to socky with you guys in our pajamas at 2:00 in the morning, there were girls that would be crying afterwards and tired, and I often used to think it's like, it's not so bad. Like, it's annoying, but it's not bad.
That's amazing, because that's the thing. It could have been one of two ways, right? You could have either been the person who said, like, you went with the route of, I've been through worse, it's annoying, but I've been through worse. Or you could have been the person that completely rebelled against it and went absolutely mad and be like, I'm not going to stand for this shit. Like, you know what? I didn't go through what I went through. So, like,
no, that wasn't my attitude.
Yeah. Sure, it's really incredible because I think that time as well was such a big learning experience because, like you say, people would, because you came from an affluent area and you went to like a really
Yeah.
good school. And just for some context, like a lot of the people that were there, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of them
Yeah.
were from very small towns. A lot of people are from very
Yes.
small Afrikaans towns because it was
Yes.
predominantly Afrikaans, right? I
Yes.
was
Yeah.
the only Indian person in this whole, like everywhere. I think there were like one or two Indian girls um,
Yes.
in other races,
Lovely.
but it was pretty much,
Yeah.
so for me, it was a completely foreign world because now I'm in,
Yeah.
surrounded by a language that's, yeah, I did well at school, but it's very different when you're engaging and interacting, So I was,
Yes.
and I came from a very sheltered, conservative Indian family in Durban, and now I'm in Joburg. I have all this freedom, or I thought I did for the first year at least.
Yes.
I'm surrounded by these massive guys. A lot of, like, now I'm surrounded by a plethora of white people, and
Yes.
then there's a plethora of attractive people, and there's a plethora of amazing people and exciting and funny. So I was just attracted
Yes.
to everything and everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was completely out of my comfort zone because
Yeah.
everything was new. And I remember like a story speaking for context on like the people that were there. I remember the one time we were sitting around a bonfire and I had adapted, right? Because I was like, you know what, I wanted to leave home and I wanted
Yeah. Okay.
to be on my own, be independent, and experience life. I didn't want to fall into the trap of I'm going to stay in Durban for the rest of my life, which is completely fine.
Yes.
But for me, I
Yes.
wanted to explore. Like I wanted to go
Yeah.
out and learn new things. Um,
Mm.
and I think travel at a young age with my family was very important because that kind of made me very curious as a young person. So when I got to Res, like, so from context for the people, we were around a bonfire the one night and I was playing on my guitar and we were all singing along and everyone was cool and we were all like a really close group of friends by then. I had loved the place. I learned to adapt and really give some of the best times of my life. And I remember the one Afrikaans girl was sitting there in this group and she said to me, I didn't know coolies could play guitar. And
Yeah, but
you
you
know,
special, Preneil, so come on.
no, but the thing of that struck me was the fact because coolie is a very derogatory term in South Africa. If you call like an
Yes.
Indian person a coolie, it's like
That.
it's
Yeah.
the almost the equivalent of using the K word. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And for a second, I looked up, but I'd become very open-minded about things, and realizing that it's an
Yes.
educational thing. And I looked up, and luckily it was someone that I was like quite good friends with, so I knew it came from a very good place. It didn't come from a
Yeah.
place of hate or.
Yeah.
And I looked up, and I could see she had no idea because where she was growing up, and in her family, she came from a small town where she had
Yes.
literally never interacted with an Indian person in her life. So that's the word she knew that
Mm.
Indian
Mm.
people were called. And a lot of the other people around stopped and everything went quiet because they had realized what she said. And I stepped in, I'm like,
Yes.
no, no, it's cool, guys, because I could see that she didn't know what she had
Yeah.
just said and that it was wrong. And that was kind of like, I wanted to mention that because to give kind of a reference to the difference in people. Like you came from Santon, where you
Yeah.
would have known straight away, whoa, that don't say that. And for her, it
Yes.
was very
Yeah.
normal. So I wanted to lay that context for like you were talking about why people
Mm.
would make fun of you because you were from Santon, etc. And that was because of
Yes.
the distance and the diversity of not just Indian white people, black people,
Yes.
colored people, Chinese people in South Africa, but even in our own culture, that
Yes.
two people with white skin could be so different apart. You know what I mean?
Different. Yes.
And I think
And I think
that's,
you,
yeah.
yeah, and I think the going back to it is, I think, when I look back on my life, I definitely think, running at RAL and UJ, and having those connections outside of school, because even when I was at school, I was running with people that were that were in RAL at that time. So it also gave me a bit more, I suppose, exposure and experience to different people, different, there were kids that went to different schools that would come and train in our training group. So you're learning how things work at different schools. And I think we also at one point competed in the Afrikaans School League. So even when I was at school, we ran in their season, which was different to ours. So I think, and that kind of was maybe a thread that pulled through to my days at Res, because the reason that I was put in the Res that I was is because one of the house committee people was in my training group.
Oh, so, wow. Who was it?
Yeah, so Francesca.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we were running together before I even went to UJ, and so I didn't know what res to put down or whatever, and she just plucked me and said, "No, you're gonna come here." So I think it was, again, maybe that's tied into part of the resilience, or tied into part of the support, and I was, placed there. But I think it did help to understand that, there are different people in the world. There's the way people grow up in their families is very different. Different cultures, and a few of the kids or children or group of us that were running at the time did all end up going to res at UJ. So we did know each other. So there was also an element of that. You're not alone in this in this space in the school,
especially with like sport, because a lot of people come from different areas, because even if they may not have been able to afford to be at a particular university, because the UJ at that time, they used to call us the Hollywood campus, because it was kind of like the more affluent group of people,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's what the other campuses would call us the Hollywood campus. But also, I think with sports, the beautiful thing is that you connect with people from all walks of life, because a lot of people would get bursaries as well. You know what I mean? So you didn't have to be in a certain demographic to be able to go to a top university, especially with sport, because of rugby and cricket. So, I think that exposure, you were very blessed and lucky in that sense that you had. Because I think if you had not had sports, I think it would have been a bit more of a difficult thing, because you knew it was your fallback thing. Like, it would have been a bit more difficult if you went straight from home and school life straight into university. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, even if I think about it now, since, we're talking about themes and patterns, I went, again, the athletics and the sport is an anchor for me, because even when I moved to Cape Town to study at UCT, the first few months were really tough there, very lonely. The people are very different down in Cape Town. And what was the one thing that I managed to do? I joined the UCT athletics team.
Sure.
And then again, you meeting different people. Every day you're going to the track there. You're going to intervarsity competitions together and stuff. So again, it's always I find it was an anchor for me and a way to connect with people. I made friends, and that was how I actually survived my time actually at UCT for the 2 years that I was there, because I struggled for the first 6 months. I thought, this is a bad idea and I need to get out of here.
It is different.
It's
very different. And I think it's something that I realized and I kind of took for granted, was the difference in people, right? In between Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban. Like I've realized that, in a sense, that when I walk around to the malls and stuff, and I'm always like, hey, like how's it to random people? And in Joburg, it was just like you say, how's it to someone, and they're like, how's it? And it's very different. Like it's very hard to explain, but only being away, because I grew up in Durban, so I was there for 18 years, and then I moved to Joburg, and I was there for 17 years, and I've now moved back, and I've realized that it's so different. Like there's a different type of engagement and interaction, because now people kind of look at me weird when I'm like I greet them randomly in the streets or at the malls.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing, but it's also like, did you find that because sport puts you in the spotlight in a sense, because that's what sport does, right? Like at school, I played a lot of sport. Like I played a lot of sports and I focused on academics. That was the two things. I barely went out. I think the first time I ever went out was in matric. It was probably when I was 18. It's probably not the best time to start going out, but I found that it it kind of put me in the spotlight a lot.
Yes.
And in a sense, I didn't kind of like that, but that's what my body knew and my mind knew. Even when I went to varsity, as much as I tried to stay low key, I was so curious that I wanted to meet people that it ended up putting me in the spotlight. And then it kind of, I find now that people have this perception of the person you are because you got so used to wearing that mask or being that person who's always smiling or making everyone happy. And as I've gotten older, I found that I'm not that person. And now trying to be that person where I'm actually more quiet and reserved and shy. And then people still have that preconceived or that perception of you that they had maybe 18 years ago, where you were just like, and now it's like, oh, you've changed. And I'm like, I actually didn't change. It's just, and maybe it's my fault for kind of being, putting myself out there as this person. And now I'm completely different. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people who know me growing up will be like, oh, Preneil's such a good kid and he's never drank and he's never done this and he's never done that. And you would know, like you saw me at varsity. You saw the shit I got up to. You were one of those people, and I was completely myself. And maybe that's why I was so happy, because I was completely free. Thank God we didn't have social media at varsity, because I'd never be able to get a job. There would have been videos of all of us running naked and doing all sorts of weird things. But and did you find that that being in the spotlight with sports and kind of you growing up, kind of wanting your own space in a sense because of it was a familiar like place. Did you find that it kind of made you conflicted in another sense? Like, was it a tug of war between I want to not be in the spotlight, but I am in the spotlight? So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, because I think from the first day, in primary school, so what are you, 5 or 6 years old, grade 1, they make you do like a short little race, and it was from that day that I was always the fastest. So it's a bit difficult to say, because on one hand, that's all I ever knew. All I ever knew was, when it came time for the athletics, it was easy for me. That was like an easy time for me. I would win. It was great. It just felt that was something I had mastered, or maybe it was my thing. But on the other hand, as I've got older, and this is where why the question is so interesting, because as I've got older, one thing I really am struggling with is this concept of keeping myself small. So it's this amazing dichotomy of being on the track, winning, everyone knows your name, the school loves you, it's you out there, you're a big deal. But in the inside, and the personality inside it, and also I think from how I grew up and all the things that I was told, or what we can call it conditioning, was don't make a scene, don't make a noise, don't upset anyone, don't ruffle any feathers, don't rock the boat. So it's kind of like, don't be out there, but now you're wanting me to like win and do well, which is being out there.
And competitive.
The one thing yes, and now, as an adult and running my own business, and it's kind of like how competition it doesn't really work anymore. It's not healthy on this level. And also now I'm coming to understand the truth that actually inside of myself I've been told to play it small because that's safe.
Yeah.
And how do I grow a business, or how do I put myself out there now and be big and be bold and confident in what I'm doing, when on one hand I'm told don't do anything different, just go along, just be quiet, just so it's another conflict inside that you've got to overcome. And yeah, again, I think it definitely messed with my big match temperament. Stepping up to the line to run was always like, ooh, I don't want to upset anyone here.
Yeah. I don't want to create friction and upset people by winning.
Yes.
People are going to start despising me or start like,
yes, and it's like, oh, I'm going to lose the race already because this is Ashleigh's here. Well, yes, but I don't want you to be upset. So please don't see me like that. It's like I'm actually a nice person, but I have to win. So I have to win this race because it's a school meeting or a provincial race. So what do we do?
Yeah, it's like, this is my future. And that's such a fascinating thing, right? Because I also grew up in that space. Like, conflict is bad. Don't talk back to people. Respect your elders, even if they do something that upsets you. Just stay in your lane. You know what I mean? And so my wife is completely different. She grew up in a space where they were allowed to freely express themselves. So I'm in a space where I'm trying to change and shake off the way people perceive me, or not everyone, like my friends, and like, will know who I am because naturally we're more free around our friends, right? But it's with family, especially with like the older generation, and it's not my parents in particular, just in general, as we know. It's more of that, play it safe. It's about, don't let people think this about you. A lot of it's dependent on what people think of you, and we're kind of like, I don't give a shit what people think about you. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, I care about my reputation, and that I want to be known as a person of integrity. So that I care about, because integrity is important to me, right? But whether people have something to say because they saw me drinking a whiskey, I really couldn't give a shit. Like, I'll do it intentionally then. So we're kind of caught in this place where I'm trying to shake that off, and my wife is trying to be this free person, but it comes with people, like, oh, look at her, look at this, look at the type of person, and it's not fair. You know what I mean? Because now we find we're in a place where you're actually conflicted, because I want to be who I am, but I'm just like, do I waste my time and energy on this? And she wants to be in a place where she can be completely free. And you end up like, it ends up stifling you, right? And this is one of the things that I've been grappling with. I mean, I love my life. I love everything that I've managed to do and achieve, and my experiences, right? I go through really bad periods with like depression, where I'm just like this week was a really tough week, and it's the reason why I was also looking forward to this conversation, because I know you have such like a unique perspective and mind when it comes to things on wellness and health. And I'm currently, I moved, packed up everything I knew, and only now am I realizing the magnitude of leaving everything I knew behind in Joburg. Like all my friends
Yeah.
are there, like all my
Mm.
really valuable connections and that I've built over the years are in Joburg, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
to a sense, I'm starting to feel that kind of loneliness and yearning for that connection again, where it's like, you know, we
Mm.
want to, should we go to the gym more and meet more people?
Yes.
You know, and one of the things I'm grappling with a lot, especially this week, the question that's been plaguing me this week is, how do I enjoy life again? You know, like how do I get back to that place where I don't want to be in the spotlight, but I also don't want to sit in the corner all day because I want to find that middle ground. Like, how do I
Yes.
start to enjoy the things I enjoyed? And now I'm at the stage where maybe I did those things of, you know, let me just smile and put on a happy face because it allowed me to be happy, because it allowed me to connect with more people.
Mm-mm.
But at the same time, I don't want to like go through that process of, oh, let me try and make these incredibly meaningful relationships again because it's like it's time consuming. You
Yes.
know, life is so stressful with COVID and, you know, economically and with just
Mm.
in KZN, the recent unrest, like,
Yes.
so finding how do you enjoy life again? So I think for me, you've kind of like managed to break through a big part of that where you found
Yes.
peace. Because I remember in Boston, you were very like you're an amazing person. You're a very nice person. Like I loved hanging out with you because there was just something different, you know, something special.
Yeah.
But I could see you were very like reserved in a sense, except when I saw you in your sports kit when you're coming back from training. Then I saw
Yeah.
Ashleigh, you know, in all her glory, really confident.
Yes.
And then you'd go back into,
Yeah.
would you say that you're in that space where you finally given yourself that freedom and that peace to just be who you are and just enjoy life?
Um, I wouldn't say I'm there because I don't think that destination exists.
Yeah.
I think as we move through life and peel away more of who we are not, I think we're going to keep doing that, until we, no longer here. And each layer that you peel off, or each process or experience that you move through, will allow you to experience more peace for longer periods of time. But I think life is always going to be undulating, and I think definitely, I don't want to say that I'm there yet, like I said, because there is no there.
Yeah.
But definitely what you were speaking about, or what I've realized over the past few months, is for me personally, I'd rather be happy than good.
Mm.
And I'd rather be honest and truthful than positive. So, it's,
Yeah. Wow.
it's, yeah. And so that's the whole thing, it's like when we have to check in with ourselves, like, am I doing something out of fear and wanting to be accepted? Or am I doing something that is in alignment with my authenticity and makes me happy, or makes my family happy?
Yeah.
Your family, you and your wife. And again, also not pushing. I think we in a very interesting time in terms of awareness, and people waking up and learning to be self-aware and understanding their feelings and emotions.
Mm.
There's a very fine line between this like faux positivity, where just be positive, and you'll law of attraction, and you'll get what you want, and don't be scared, just be positive, where that's not real.
Yeah.
That's not real, because we are designed to feel certain things. We are designed to experience fear, we are designed to experience sadness, pain, suffering. So to pretend to be positive is like slapping on icing on a frot cake. It's underneath. you still feel what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And definitely that's been, one thing that, that I've learned through this COVID experience. But really going back to your question, and again, after going to my family on Friday evening and coming home, I have created a life that offers me more peace, that offers me more comfort, that offers me connections in ways that I never expected. My connection with my animals, my connection to my partner, and most importantly, my connection to spirit, or the universe, or source, whatever you want to call it. And my connection to myself. But in June, I had a really tough month. I actually entered into like another dark night of the soul, where I stayed in my pajamas for a whole month, apathetic, was really working through a tough time. And I think I've got a lot of tools, and I've gained a lot of awareness and understanding myself and what I've been through, that I could say I needed to feel that, because I've also worked through or survived this life using suppression as a tool to survive.
Yeah.
Where what happens if I give my depression or my apathy or my shame, or my grief or my loneliness or my sadness the space to speak to me, tell me, what you've been a part of my life for so long. And I've been very good at shoving you down. And in June I decided to, give it airtime. Okay, talk to me, speak to me, tell me what you want to say. And it's kind of very interesting as well, because then I got COVID for the second time after that.
And talk about that.
And it was, I could definitely, underneath all of that was, just this sadness that I've carried for my whole life. So like you say, when I was running, I did feel empowered. My body was very strong. I was, that's an area I could navigate. But, coming back into everyday life, or going to classes, or dealing with people or family or whatever, I would, completely contract and shrink. And I just, I've had a very sore, broken heart for a very long time.
Sure. And it's important, right? It's important for us to have those, I think, and express like those dark, because the one thing I find is people kind of always expect positive people or happy people to be positive and to be happy. And it's a problem, because we all have dark days, right? We all have dark days. Like,
absolutely.
And that's the thing. We're in a time where we're able to express, and it's okay to not be okay. Like, that's probably the most cliched thing that I keep hearing now. It's okay not to be okay. But it's true, right? Because it allows us, because when you're happy, I find that you kind of, everything's great, everything's going away, everything's fine. You don't actually stop to take stock. It's just like, I'm winning at this, I'm getting it right. But when you go into these darker spaces, it really allows you to take a step back and reflect, introspect. It forces you to dig deep. And I think I wouldn't say the more often, not like every week, but if you have this at least a few times a year, I think it's really important, because it kind of like humbles you, pulls you down from, I'd rather have 6 really big depressive episodes a year than have 2, because by the time I get to the end of the year, and if I have one, I'm so far up the happy trail that to kind of deal with this deep dark place now, it's unbelievable. Like, and I think for me this week, it's been that, like, I've sat down and I'm working, and obviously my mind's going, and then I'll take like these little breaks to just think. And I was like, what am I even doing? Like, why am I even alive? Like, honestly, what is the purpose of even being alive right now? And I think
Yes.
I go back to this thing of, I think back to the person I used to be, and I was just always happy, and just I'd have these little quiet depressive moments, but I found such comfort in those depressive moments that
Yes.
sometimes I go back into that where I feel safe being depressed and being miserable because it's so familiar, right? And then I think, why can't I just be this happy, spontaneous, outgoing person? Not just for me, but just for my wife, for my family. Why can't I be this person cracking jokes? And it's so frustrating. Life just gets so frustrating because you're continuously fighting with your own mind. Like, I remember when I started working, I was in this battle of, I want to be this hard ass. I want to be this person who does not take shit at work. And then I want to be this person who's a loving and caring and emotionally supportive person. But they can't exist. You can't be two different people because they start to bleed into each other. So how do you find that common space? And that common space is up here, right? In everything you do.
I'm going to correct you. The common space is here.
Your heart.
Yes.
Elaborate for me, because that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I think a lot of people, because we all think it's in our mind, right? We think everything needs to be up here, but it's
love. I think so definitely, for my own journey and the work that I do with a lot of people, and if I have to be sharing and putting a message out there, is the most important thing, and what we're getting pushed to connect with on a collective level, is what is happening in your heart. The mind is amazing and can really, allow us to create certain things and, process certain things. But ultimately, where the information lies, where the healing lies, where the love lies, is basically from the neck down, is the body. And I think that's where we're getting quite confused with, is that we've grown up in a society and a culture of separation. Our head is here and our body's here, or our head is here and our heart is here.
They tell you the heart and mind mustn't listen, like follow your mind, not your heart, right? That's what we've been told.
Exactly. But your intuition, your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, your guidance, the small voice of love is not here. This is the inner critic. This is the space where the conditioning sits. This is the space where the trauma paradigm is playing out, is in the head. Whereas if we drop into the heart space, or even lower into the womb space, deep within the body, there's a different voice. There's a different voice that's kinder, that's softer, that's more gentle, that comes from a place of love. A lot of the time when we move or work with the head, it's a lot of fear-based narratives. We do things because we're scared, or we do things because we are desperate, or trying to control something. When we try and control life, it's very much coming from the head space. Whereas if we can take a moment and learn to drop into the heart and into the body, we make choices from our inner knowing and our intuition, which comes from we're making choices and decisions from love, not from fear.
Yeah, sure.
But it takes practice, because also if we're going into the heart, you must remember that this is the space where we feel things. So most of us have suppressed a lot of emotions and feelings, and in order for us to experience, like you said, those happy moments, joy, love, peace, freedom, we also have to feel the other end of the spectrum, because the heart is also about balance. You don't have light without dark. You don't have joy without the depression. And what we need to start doing is, moving into that space and learning that we can be held and supported in both our dark and our light. Yeah, and
Can
in order
coexist.
for us, yes, and for order, well, it does exist, and I think the grappling of the mind is not accepting the duality that lies within the heart.
Sure.
So it's, and when we talk about the dark or the shadow, Carl Jung refers to it as the shadow psyche. It's not parts of us that are bad. It's parts of us that we have rejected because they've surfaced and have been shown to us that we're not accepted if those are out in the world. So for example, being depressed when you're young it's not acceptable. You've got to perform, you've got to do well at sport, you've got to do well at school, you've got to achieve, you've got to be busy, you've got to be productive. And if you're suffering with depression in your heart, your mind's going to start a conversation of, well, I'm not busy enough, so I'm not good enough. Like, what's wrong with you? Or something along those lines, where we need to be saying, actually, your depression is welcome, your sadness is welcome, your apathy or your shame is welcome and is lovable. You are lovable with your depression and your joy, your apathy and your connection. And that's more of the narrative that we need to start implementing into our culture and into our society, is that no matter what you've got going on, your dark and your light is lovable exactly as it is. And just a recent initiation that I went through spoke to me about when someone is fully loved, they are then able to experience their full potential. And that is what healing or offering a healing space is about, is to offer a space where you're fully accepted, there's no judgment, and it is a space of love that is held for you, and in that you are able to experience yourself and what your potential is and can be.
Wow.
Sorry.
No, this is amazing.
We went there.
No,
Yeah.
we have to. This is what it's about.
Yeah.
This is why I wanted you on here, because it's not just about me at all. It's literally about, I think we're just in a weird space where, like you say, our mind for so many years, like our brain has been telling us, and it's genetics and years of, like evolving as human beings, that we go back to that primitive brain. And I was in a discussion where our brain goes or in a talk recently where they were talking about our primitive brain and how it kind of like we're constantly in this fight or flight. And over the years, that's kind of stayed in us. So we kind of like in a constant state of stress. Like our brain is constantly, the moment something happens, it's just we just let all those hormones out, and then we're constantly stressed. And then we need to be smart about it. And that's where like the heart comes in, because we have to trust what's here. But for so long, we're in a world, how do you break through that in a world where, yes, being good and people want to be loved, but they get forced into a place where we need to survive and to compete, or to take it to the next level, you have to be a certain way. And I think that's where people are struggling. It's because we've worked in these corporate environments where you're told you need to be hardcore, otherwise you're not going to make it, because if you don't, someone else will. But that acceptance of, what, I'm okay with who I am, and being the kind and soft person, because one day it'll work out for me. And it's a matter of choice, right? Like at some point in my life, I made a choice where I said that I don't want to, like, I'm ambitious, but I'm not going to be ambitious to the point where I'm unhappy, because I can get anything I want, but am I going to be happy when I go to bed at night with the person that I've become? It's easy to be, I'm not saying it's easy to be a dick, that also comes with its challenges.
No, I think it is easy.
It is easy, but there's also a part of you that you can only pretend for so long before
So
it
long.
becomes like exhausting, because it's like it's not who you naturally are as a person. Like I can scream and shout. I mean, I've had many moments of where people at varsity would say that I was a complete asshole. Like there are moments with really good friends where they'd be like, you know what, Preneil, dude. Like there are moments where we still laugh about it now, where they're like, yeah, remember that night, when you were a complete ass. And I was like, I do.
Yes.
But it's in a world, where I think we're all kind of faced with being kind. We have to be kind. We're realizing that your job doesn't define who you are, and it's okay to accept yourself for who you are. Does it? The term that's being thrown around is mindfulness, right? So you're speaking about this thing of, being accepting, being aware of your emotions. So it's should in your head, should it be heartfulness or wholeheartedness or fullness
I was
as opposed
about
to
to
mindfulness?
Yes, I was about to say, actually, it's heartfulness that we need. And I think something that's really important is self-awareness. So what is happening in myself, or in relation to my life, in relation to my friendships and my connections, like how am I showing up in those things, and also how do certain things actually make me feel, again, feeling, connecting to the heart. How does my job make me feel? How does my, am I doing something because I was told to do it, or or is this something that really makes me feel good, or is this something that makes me not feel good? And I think that's what's really coming through a lot with COVID at the moment, is if you look at where COVID really hits people, it's here, it's not here. So again, it's making it, it's heart and it's lungs, and it's really making us, it brings up a lot of feelings. So a lot of people that have experienced COVID have spoken about actually how emotional it is. And yes, and they've had memories come up from traumas that they've experienced. It's quite a thing. And again, it's here because this is the space that we carry a lot of stuff. Again, is it loneliness? Is it sadness? And the heart and specifically the lungs carry the emotion grief. So if we're looking at what COVID is doing and affecting the lungs, or helping us have issues to breathe and take in life, how many of us have experienced grief that is ungrieved, ungrieved grief? A lot of us carry sadness and a grief. For example, like you, Preneil, leaving Joburg and moving to Durban, that's a grief. It's a loss. And it's to say, well, possibly, this week and how you've been feeling, there's a sadness there that you've left behind a certain life or certain connections, and you've moved on to something new. And it's a natural part of growth, and it's a natural cycle that we're always going to move through. We're always moving through death, life, and rebirth. And but what we don't do is we don't grieve the deaths, whether they be jobs, whether they be parts of ourselves, whether they be friendships, connections. Even, for example, now at the moment, and what I've moved through, and having had COVID recently, it's I'm wanting to start working quite differently, and it's to say, have I grieved my old business, or have I grieved the person that I was when I used to work in a specific way? And probably that's not yet, it's coming. But there's always this thing of we have to acknowledge that we've moved through a cycle, and yeah, we don't give ourselves a chance to do that. You've uprooted your whole life that you've had here in Joburg, you know, and again, also, a big part of my work is using nature as one of our most profound teachers. What happens when you uproot something, and you replant it? It's not all of a sudden going to flourish and bloom and grow flowers straight away.
Yeah.
Some of its leaves are going to die, the roots need to settle. It takes time to then reestablish itself in that soil. And we are very much a part of nature. Nature is part of us, and we the same.
Yeah.
When we go through an uproot, we're gonna not exactly be blossoming and producing fruit straight away.
Yeah. And that's the thing, and that's the most interesting thing, because in my mind, I start to question everything, right? The move and leaving everything I knew. In my heart, I know this was the right
Yes.
thing to do. Like in my heart, I know that I got the job that I really wanted. I got to change and have a change of everything, a change of scenery. I got to live by the beach. I got in my heart, I know everything is right. Everything
Yes.
about what happened, there's a completely perfect reason for why everything has happened. I know in my head, I mean in my heart, that this is a part of a piece, right? And you can only look at the pieces when you look backwards. I know
Yes.
in my heart that this is a very important, if not the most important piece in my professional career for something that's coming in the future.
Yes.
So maybe in 10 years we'll talk and I'll be able to tell you about that.
Yeah,
But
that
in
was
my
it.
heart, I know. But it's the mind. The mind is the problem, because
Yes.
the mind, the moment something doesn't happen, you start to think, you start to question everything. Like you start to question, was it the right thing for me to do to my family, to uproot us, to do, all of that.
Yes.
And it's so interesting when you were talking about the breathing and the lungs and the life, right? Because this is why breathing is such an important part of our mental state. It's a thing. Like breathing exercises and techniques and
Yes.
all of these things are actually a really important thing, because I've been reading a lot about it, watching lots of videos about how
Yes.
breathing can change your mental state. That's why they say when you have a panic attack or you're stressed, take deep
Breathe.
breaths, breathe.
Yes.
It's like an actual thing, and being mindful of your breathing. That's why meditation, picture
Yes.
breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Stop, listen to the
Yes.
sounds. Everything ties together with what? With nature, being out in nature. And that's how we actually started to, sorry, sorry, my mom's calling me twice. My brother's been sick. I just want to find out.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Hey, mom.
Fine.
Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Hi, mom.
Hey, Tennier.
Hi. Oh, I'm doing a podcast right now. Oh, shucks. Oh, why did you do that? I was gonna come through later. We're coming to visit you. Shucks. Yeah, I was gonna come later. Shucks. Yeah, I'm literally recording a podcast right now. So yeah, you can leave it there. Yeah. Why did you do that? You should have told me at least. I'm so sorry. I usually don't take calls ever,
Okay.
but just because my brother came out of hospital and he tried to call a few times, so
Sure.
I was like,
Just checking.
yeah, I'm so sorry. And I hate this because it breaks the whole flow of the conversation, which I completely hate.
No problem.
Yeah. Cool. So one of the things we're talking about, like breathing, and we're talking about,
Mm.
the mind, and we're talking about the heart, and then you mentioned nature, right? Because this is kind of like
Yes.
where I don't know how it started that I reached out to you. Oh, I saw your videos. I saw your videos on the dragon conversations
Yes.
and the dragon stuff, right? And then we
Mm.
started to interact a lot more because I was going on walks a lot. I was doing a lot of walks. I was
Yes.
doing a lot of nature things. And I
Yes.
found that I kind of rejected that part of life for so long, like being out in
Mm.
nature and just connecting. So I started going when COVID hit and all these lockdown restrictions happening. I found I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
All I had was nature and the ability to walk somewhere and get that done. And
Mm.
if I couldn't walk, then I would find some sort of area where I could if I couldn't go out in public. So I would go
Yes.
to a park every day, and then I started running, and then it became part of my daily routine. And I think
Mm.
that's the one thing, like with COVID and lockdown, and you know, being in this place where everything's unfamiliar for a lot of people, but for the people that
Yes.
have been doing that, it's such a familiar. It's life, carries on. And I
Yes.
think like with you, you've had COVID twice,
Yes.
right? Twice. So someone who was already in that space and your
Yes.
mind was kind of, you're very connected to everything that you do. And we'll get there to what you do and how you got to where you are.
Yes.
What was that experience like? I mean, you said the second time was a lot worse than the first, like that
Yes.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does go through your mind? Because everything is a mental, it's in your heart, it's in your lungs, like it affects your
Yes.
functioning, especially someone like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time I had COVID was in January of this year, and it's actually been really, I'm going to use the word synchronistic, that the times that I've had COVID is probably when my heart has felt the heaviest. So when I contracted COVID in January, I lost a patient of mine that I've been working on quite intensely. Yeah, it was really tough.
Sorry. So sorry.
It's okay. So he had motor neuron disease, and he was when I met him, he was very at the late stages of his illness. So completely paralyzed on a ventilator, being tube fed, and he'd been trying absolutely everything to recover. And he got my number somehow. And so I started seeing him in 2019. And I'd go there twice a week. And, it was a really interesting experience because he had been through so much trauma as a young Black South African. And, he lived through apartheid and, very, he didn't have a lot of money growing up, and he really made a huge success of his life. But he'd never spoken about what he'd been through and all the traumas and stuff that he experienced in the townships and things like that. And it was only when I started seeing him and having sessions with him that he spoke about his stuff.
Yeah.
And he passed away in January when I contracted COVID. I didn't give him COVID, but he was really battling towards in like the end of the year, end of 2020. So I saw him through the first through COVID. We continued our treatment, and it was just he was just tired of trying, and it was a real struggle for him to get his mind right, and but emotionally he shifted a lot. And so he passed away in the January, and I contracted COVID at the same time. So again, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of because I think seeing someone twice a week for 2 years, you build a very, very strong relationship with it.
Family.
And I think also I think also because we spoke about so much of what he'd been through, that there were things that he'd shared with me that he'd never spoken about to anyone. And I think I also, for me and the work that I do, I held this belief that he would be okay, he would recover. Also because he was following a website in the USA that people that have recovered from motor neuron disease through meditation, through diet, through wellness, through holistic treatments and healing have shifted. But I think maybe he was just too far along in the progression of his disease. So at that time, so first COVID, again, heart, grief, a lot of sadness. And then it obviously, when you're grieving one thing, other griefs start surfacing.
Yeah.
So it was very much processing a lot of grief that I possibly hadn't grieved yet in my life. But I never had any issues breathing. For me, it was mostly just body fatigue. And it felt very almost like you move out of your body and you processing stuff emotionally, energetically, spiritually, mentally in another place.
Yeah.
So it's like you just leave your body for a little bit and process and work through stuff, and as you start recovering from COVID, you move back in.
Sure.
That's kind of how it felt.
Wow.
Then the second time, like I mentioned earlier in our chat, I'd been in my pajamas for a month. I was moving through this depression and this apathy and loneliness and sadness, but not grief, but just a different type of sadness. And I noticed I wanted to shift myself out of it. Like, okay, snap out of it. It's been a month, enough now. You've sat with it, you've explored, you've done your journaling and meditating and asking questions, and now it's time to shift. And then I got COVID again. And I think because of the work that I do and my connection to spirit and things around me, COVID's quite interesting to have a conversation with. And one thing, I'm going to call her a she because it feels like that. But she said to me, you were trying to shift out of your process too quickly. You were trying to shift back into an old pattern of getting on with it, being productive, carrying on, and no, you can't do that. So it's almost like I got the COVID again to continue processing whatever I was processing in the June and that depressive state that I'd suppressed for so long. And I remember one evening, and it was much worse the second time. Then I experienced a lot more symptoms of losing your taste and smell. Again, no issue with breathing, no issue with the lungs, but very much pain in my body, fevers. And I remember I think it was kind of like 2 weeks I'd had the COVID in July, and I was like, okay, again, wanting to start feeling better, wanting to feel more like myself. And I remember one evening I felt this like fever, that,
Yeah.
hot, cold. And then I was lying there and I was awake, and it was like COVID was a big snake, and she wrapped herself around me. And yeah, like obviously at first you catch a fright and you're like,
Yeah.
oh gosh, what the hell is happening? But it was very much like, you are moving through a rebirth, you are moving through a process. Let me work with you in the way that I need to, so that you can come out of this reborn.
Yeah.
Stop fighting it, stop resisting it, just surrender. If you surrender, it will be much smoother.
Sure.
So then I'm lying there, I'm like, okay, surrender, bitch.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough, but that's one of our, biggest things, is one of the issues that a lot of us are grappling with at the moment, and I hear it all the time, is so much uncertainty. Everything's so uncertain. We don't know. And human beings have this need to know thing.
Yeah.
We need to know the right choice. We need to know what's happening. We need to know when we can go on holiday. We need to know when the lockdown will be lifted. But uncertainty is probably our greatest emotional and spiritual teacher, because it shifts us into a space of surrender, and it shifts us into a space of learning to trust. So you spoke about fear and fight and flight and freeze and all that stuff that happens when our mind gets scared or fearful. And COVID is really here to help us shift out of that, and to say, can you be more trusting and more accepting and surrender to life, whether you are in lockdown or whether there's no lockdown.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing for a lot of us, because human beings with
it's
that
changing
fear
everything we've known.
Yes. And also we've got this need to control. Yeah. If we know, we can control. And COVID's all about the unknown and the uncontrollable. People don't know how this virus is going to affect people. It affects everyone so differently. The response to being vaccinated or not vaccinated is also unknown. So again, it's just going to keep pushing us to this element of, you need to access and feel trusting and surrendering, and know that you are held in other ways that on from your mind and on from fear and on from control.
Yeah.
Because when we let go of control, we can be more soft and we can be more receptive, and that's what we're getting pushed to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard thing, is people to some extent don't want to become soft, and we don't, because it's, you kind of feel like you need to be tougher than ever, but being soft doesn't mean you're not tough, right? Or tough. And I think this is, for me, spot on, because that's where I'm at. I'm kind of at a stage where I feel like I was laughing because I felt like I peaked too early when COVID started, right? When lockdown started, I was like, I was just in my happiest space. I was like, this is everything I've ever wanted, not the sickness and the tragedy of it all, but the ability to just press pause, right?
Yes.
Be at home, spend time at home, not sit in traffic, not stress about whatever. I mean, I was working more, but it was kind of at my own, my own pace. I was at home in the comfort of my home with my wife. I was like, this is what the world kind of needed. So I peaked very early. I enjoyed it way too much, way too early on, for way too long. 2020 for me, as tough as it was emotionally, lots of people passing away, lots of friends, family, lots of people losing jobs. So the tragedy of it all was horrific, right? But from a personal point of view, I was able to be at home more. I was able to do a lot more of the things I enjoyed more, going on walks, exercising, which was a huge part of me growing up. You know, it was a big part of who my body knew. And then I got to adulthood, and I, even through varsity, I like exercise, whether I was running, playing sport, you know, on
Yes.
stage, doing all our cultural stuff. Even when I was out on a bender, I was dancing all night. So that's exercise, you know.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
I started working, a lot of that fell away. And then I started working out a lot, and then I stopped. So my body was so used to exercise as a form of therapy, and I stopped it completely. So when COVID happened and lockdowns, level 5, I was obviously walking around a lot more, running more. I was watching like documentaries that intrigued me, you know, like a lot of, I was doing things I loved. We were spending more time cooking, my wife and I was reading a lot more. So everything was great. I enjoyed like the lockdown. I was so, you know, like I was full. I just felt so complete. I didn't even mind working the extra hours because it was just like everything else in my life was so good. And then 2021 comes along, and I kind of feel like I've struggled with 2021 and the lockdown and the restrictions and the change. I love change. I've enjoyed the change, but it comes back to the thing of letting go, because now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm here. What's the next move, or what's happening next? What's the next step? Am I financially okay? Am I this? Am I that? And it's literally a thing of control. Like, how am I going to do this next month? How am I going to pay for that next month? How am I going to, now I'm here, I'm by the beach. I've always wanted it. How am I going to start living? How am I going to start making the most of this? And everything is this pressure of, now that I'm in a new thing, instead of just letting things be and let things take their time, I'm kind of putting this pressure on myself to, okay, I need to go to the beach every day, because I always said if I live by the ocean, I'm going to take walks on the beach. So it's like control. I'm trying to control everything around me when I've relied on allowing things to happen around me for so long. So you literally, like, this bulb just went off in my head as to where, you know, and we know this, right? We know, not, I've always gone that free spirit of just, I've always been a faithful person. I've been a spiritual person, not religious. You know, I don't believe in the thing of anymore of, you know, I have to be in a church to be a religious. I'm very spiritual, very in tune with that. And I think in our conversations like last year and early on this year, I was always in that space, you know, like, um, and I kind of felt like I've lost my way in that sense, because like you say, tried to control everything and trying to decipher everything. So yeah, it's a very stressful position to put ourselves in. And
I think, you know, for a lot of people, and I know because of, you know, a lot of the clients that I see, you know, they're struggling with a lot of anxiety, again, the stress, like you said, the unknown. How am I going to make it? Is my family going to be okay? Am I going to have enough financial support? And again, that is coming from a space of fear, and again, a space of needing certainty to feel okay, where what we, you know, the evolution of consciousness is really pushing us to experience, can you trust that you will be okay no matter what? And, you know, can you trust your relationships? Can you trust your connections? Can you, you know, return to your heart? Because if you feel in your heart, you know, your heart and your body is not really worrying about, when can I go on my next holiday? That's your mind. You know, your heart is, you know, asking you to tap into trust, to tap into kindness, to use this time to pour love into yourself and through your relationships. And, you know, what you were speaking about in the beginning of lockdown for you, you know, was that term, heartfulness. Your heart was full. You were doing things from this space, because the pressure of navigating this space was taken away.
And that's because we all kind of felt together, right? For me, it was like,
yes,
no one knows, we're all in this together. So mentally,
yes,
I'm not going to care about what happens, because I know
what happens?
everyone is just where the world could be ending. And for me, that was comforting. I was like, if we're going to end, let's all go together. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And it
yeah,
was never a thing of, what if I died? It was almost like, it's cool. Like nothing else matters right now.
yeah,
Family, friends, connections. I was spending time going through old photos. I was reconnecting with a lot of people, with so many people
yes,
I haven't spoken to in 10, 15 years, and yourself
yes,
included. And I
yeah,
was drawn to certain people that I had these
yeah,
really strong bonds and connections with. Um, and I think that's what it was about. And that's, I think, where I've kind of failed myself as well, is that I saw the joy it brought me and connecting with people, and that
yes,
was more important than anything else we were going through. Like, who cared if you couldn't do something or couldn't eat something? It was like, who cares? We're in it together. If we're all gonna die, we're all gonna die. That was comforting, right? I find comfort in my own death, but
yeah,
also as a collective,
yes,
I feel like that's the best way. Like, if you're gonna do it, let's all go together.
yes,
But then I was like, maybe that's selfish, because there are
yes,
people that maybe don't want to die. But I think, and that's where I fell off, because now we're all kind of thinking of, oh, life's about to get back to normal. Okay, people are going back to the office.
no,
We're all like, okay, cool. We're done now with that. And now life's going back to normal. So we need to go back to worrying about the normal things that we were always used to worrying about. And it's not going to go
yeah,
back to normal. We're all going to go back
no,
traumatized. We're all going to go back with a different set of trauma. We're all going to go back with a new belief system, but we're still going to
mm,
be fighting that new belief system, because what we've always believed or known is trying to creep back into our life.
yeah, the familiar is comfortable, and we'll revert back to the familiar being certain
Yeah,
versus the unfamiliar um, is scary and unknown. And what we don't actually realize, or what we need to maybe start becoming aware of, is that uncertainty holds the potential of infinite possibility. How boring would it be if you knew exactly what you're going to be doing in 10 years time?
yeah,
Life would not be very exciting, but there is an element of anticipation, there is an element of dreaming, there's a excitement that you don't know what you're going to be doing in 10 years time, and possibly, and this has been proven to me over and over again, through the work that I do, is that things work out better. Well, what I've noticed, and what I hear from other people, is things work out better than what we could have imagined.
yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
basically, everyone's trying to control things. Everyone's feeling scared of being uncertain, but they're not looking at the higher perspective, or taking a step back, and like we're doing a life review here. They're not
Mm,
doing a life review and actually saying, "Wow, things have always actually worked out. I've always actually been okay. Yes,
yeah.
there's been tough times, and yeah, I never saw myself actually doing what I'm doing now. Like, how amazing is that?"
And we're living proof of that, right? Like, literally, we were
Yes.
in a lab. You did a BSc in sports science. I did a BSc in psychology, physiology. I studied optometry, actually. Let's start there first.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now, and I'm in media. Like, I've been in media for 14, 15 years. Like, I could never have imagined
Yes,
where I'd be. And I think, like, and the
exactly.
same for you. I think, and it's so fascinating, because when I saw what you do, it made sense when I thought back to you as a person all those years ago, and
Yeah,
it made sense for me. Like, this is exactly where Ash should be. This is what I mean. A lot of
yeah,
I think the times when we did interact and engage, we always had very meaningful conversation. We never had
yes,
like small talk, and we never had kind of, we laughed a lot.
Yes.
which you reminded me about. We laughed a lot, we were silly, but there was always an element of depth. And I think that's what I loved
Yes.
about our interactions, is that there was something that we both identified in each other that we could relate to, you know.
Yes.
And I think that's what kind of like drew me back into like, you know, this conversation and reconnecting with you, because I just started to remember. I saw pictures of you from varsity, and I was like, I just felt that instant, you know, that connection again. And for someone like, and then I started reading up on what you do. So
Yes.
just to trace it back, tough childhood, a lot of loneliness, you get into sport to try and, you know, bring you some time away. You find that sport really builds you and it really is your place, your safety space. Go through school, enjoying school, go to varsity, you know, things happen, you enjoy it, you stick to sports, you study sports science. You start working as a personal trainer, you really enjoy it, you love it. And then something shifted. You got sick. You got sick, and is that what led you to what you do now, which is the holistic method of healing?
Yeah. So, you know, it's quite interesting because people often always actually ask me, how did you get into this work? And again, thinking about our conversation today and you know, doing the life review, is when I was at UJ, I used to write at that time I used to write in a journal to my guardian angel, you know, asking for help and asking for support and get me through this or whatever. And I would also write a response. So almost like if they were talking through me.
Yeah.
And I'd completely forgotten about that. You know, I think, how old were we? 19, 20 years old. And, you know, at that point, I was writing messages to myself from another realm, not actually thinking that it was anything, you know. So I think that this work and, you know, how I grew up has led me to have a connection to something else.
Yeah.
And yeah, when I was working in the gym, it again, not realizing how sensitive I was, because I'd been told that that's not a good thing, you know, be tough, be hard, work hard, no nonsense. And I actually started developing cluster migraines at that time. And I only realized how bad it was the one day. I was like, okay, you know, be tough, get through work. And I took like a handful of painkillers, and I was like, ooh, like taking 8 Panados to like kill a headache is a bit hardcore, you know.
Like sounds familiar. Sounds very familiar.
Something's not right with the situation. So then I started looking at, you know, what's causing me migraines, diet, all of this. I went to a neurologist, did a whole bunch of tests. Obviously, they couldn't find anything. Clinically perfectly healthy, but suffering with a constant migraine. And then they put me on antidepressants to treat the pain. And that kind of like opened up Pandora's box for me, because I gained a lot of weight from those tablets. I was always tired, always needing to sleep. And I remember distinctly one day standing in the middle of that gym. I think I'd been on this medication for about 6 months, and obviously been trying everything to manage my weight while still taking this. And I remember standing there thinking, wow, I don't feel a thing. I don't feel a thing for these people. I don't feel a thing for this gym. And I don't feel a thing for myself. And I was like, this is a very dangerous space. And I think it was my first interaction with the true effects of suppressed emotion and numbing out. I was numb. And that's a feeling in itself, you know. And I was like, okay, no, it was almost like I heard my body's voice for the first time.
Yeah.
standing there, and I thought, no, okay. So yeah, then I started, I went for chiropractic treatment, and I started, changing the way that I ate, and I didn't lose a single kilogram of weight, and I started doing triathlons because I was like, wow, if I could exercise for like 6 hours, then like I'll be cool,
Yeah.
And like, to be honest with you, Preneil, I was miserable. I was unhappy. And my body was trying to speak to me through my migraines that overthinking, you in your head too much, there's excessive energy, you're not acknowledging the fact that you're so sensitive and you're surrounded by this hectic gym energy, noise all the time. And the way that it got my attention was it made me gain a sufficient amount of weight, which I couldn't budge until I decided to get happy. So, I mean, I got off the antidepressants, and I, read every diet book. I then went and studied nutrition through the International Olympic Committee, and their program was very much around sports nutrition, and they had a conference every year, so I went over, and it was really great to have that experience. Wow. And just to be in the UK and to experience their sports medicine and their nutritional stuff that they've got going on was really, it was really inspiring. And I don't know, something in me nothing was changing with my physical body, even though I was putting in all this effort for a physical response. So I also went to see a dietitian at that point, followed the meal plan, nothing shifted for me. I then decided that the only way I'm going to get this right is if I study the science myself and figure it out. So that's when I moved to Cape Town, and then did my medical honors in nutrition and dietetics.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Congrats.
Yeah, well, I'm not practicing, so
What's there?
Yeah, somewhere there. And again, another distinct moment, because now I'm like, which was really tough, is that we obviously had to measure our bodies and our body fat and our glucose and cholesterol and how our body responds to food and health. And that was really embarrassing because I felt much fatter than the other girls in the class, and also it was quite challenging because I was the oldest. It was a small group of 15 of us, and most of them had come straight from undergrad. Where yes. I'd had a little bit of life experience. I'd run my own business as a personal trainer. I'd interacted with different cultures and the different foods that they ate, so then going back and being this older, very uncomfortable with my body image and how I felt about myself in this group of young girls. And I again had another distinct moment where my body, I remember standing in the kitchen of the cottage I was staying in, and I just thought, like, I'm so tired of this. Like, I'm so tired of worrying about what I eat, how much I eat, when I eat it. If you combine certain foods, then this is going to have this response. Nothing was working, severely frustrated, exhausted of the effort. And I just thought, the thought that came was, I just want to enjoy myself. I just want to feel good. I just want to be
live in the moment,
immersed in the experience more than how do other people perceive my body in this experience. It's completely disconnected from what I was experiencing. And I don't know, whatever shifted and flicked in my brain that day, I stopped giving a shit about the eating. Which was quite dichotomous considering I was becoming a dietitian. Yeah, I was like, no man, screw this portion control and cups of this and weights of that. I was like, F it, I'm just going to just do what I want to do and just be happy. Eat, enjoy myself. And all of a sudden, return to normal.
That's insane. And it's literally
Yeah.
it's a mental thing, like literally a mental shift changed everything. I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
this, I mean, this wasn't the science, wasn't anything. It was just the
No.
heart and the mind,
Yeah,
right?
it was a choice of how I wanted to experience my reality versus what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
yeah, and I just thought to myself, I want to be happy. I want to, I love food and I love eating, and I think pleasure from eating is such an important component to our well-being.
yeah.
And I wasn't getting any of that with restriction and control and meal planning and don't eat this and choose this instead of that. I was like, no, it's quite difficult to become a practicing dietitian because you can't really tell people just be happy and eat
what you want. Yeah.
So I practiced for a bit, and when I moved back to Joburg, all of those traumas, because obviously being away in Cape Town, I didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that I had grown up with. But moving back to Joburg, all of that got re-triggered, and it was very difficult, very, very difficult, because something you experience it differently, or you experience your relationships to the trauma differently when you're not living. And I think I made this assumption that I'm older, I've got this qualification, I've achieved stuff, I'm better, my health is better, so that means everything else should be better. No.
Nope.
The wounding is still there.
Yeah.
The wounding, the pain, the soreness, it was still there. So no matter how much I'd achieved, no matter how much I thought I got right or believed I was getting right, it doesn't take away the underlying wounds that are there. And that's when I got my first pet. I wasn't allowed pets as a child, so I was living with my fiance at the time, and I got my first dog, and she's completely changed my life. I felt a lot of heart stuff start happening, and for the first time in my life, I felt love. I understood love. I felt love for this animal, and I felt love returned from her. And I was like, okay, like there's the relationship and understanding of love. There's love wounds. There's wounding here around love. And it's definitely affected my previous relationships, how I relate to myself and how I want to work. It just infiltrates into everything. And I read an interesting book about an animal psychic who basically helped people heal through speaking to animals. So I read this book and I was like, oh my word, a reality that I've got to tap into, because it's like right up my street. And then I started doing healing courses. I did my first Reiki. I started working with the energy systems of the body. And then I started noticing that working with people and their eating is like a huge emotional component.
Of course.
And
emotional eating.
So then I started working a bit more with that, and eating disorders and the underlying pain that sits. It's like a toxic pond underlying the eating disorder, and I wanted to start combining the energy work with the eating stuff.
The eating stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and because ultimately, you know, it's a two-way street. You know, if we eat better, we feel better.
Yeah.
But also we've got to heal certain things within us that make us feel like choosing certain foods. You know, so then I started, you know, conceptualizing the idea of food itself having a specific energy and frequency. And, you know, what you put into your body is then going to emanate that frequency. But again, if you are feeling pain and are depressed and are experiencing some kind of suffering, you're not going to feel like kale.
Yeah, exactly. Because then that's just going to bring you unhappiness, right? Eating something you don't want to eat, you're just going to be miserable. It needs to be like your meal plans. You were eating right, but you were miserable because you didn't want to restrict yourself. So it's not just you're fixing one problem, but it's breaking something else. Like you're fixing your eating habits, but your mind. So it's not one dimensional, right?
Yeah. So then it developed into a lot of you know, connections to your body, embodiment. How do you feel about your body image stuff? A lot of work around the psychology of eating in itself. You know, why we choose certain foods, and you know, it is very much linked to, we have a behavior that's linked to a specific feeling, and that feeling is derived from a need that is either met or unmet. Yeah. So really taking it much deeper to saying, okay, Preneil, what are your needs? And I can guarantee you now, 99% of adults cannot answer that question. What do you need? I need love. At this moment, I maybe need support. I need to express myself. I need nurturance. I need comfort. I need to be able to, you know, speak my truth or to be heard. That's the theme. I need to maybe be acknowledged. And unfortunately, if those needs aren't met, we are going to function in a specific feeling, and that will determine our behavior. So actually, in order to change the diet, we need to say, how do you feel? And what are your emotional unmet needs?
Which is interesting. Yeah, wow. Because that effectively affects how we behave, right? Like you say, I mean, if we're like, the one thing is you want to always be present. Like that's the one thing I find that I sometimes, like Alice, my wife, will tell me that I'm just like, she can see I'm here, but I'm not here. Like my mind is somewhere else. And it's because I'm just thinking about all the things I need or want or that are important. And it's affecting my ability to kind of be present and engage and connect with someone, you know, like when connection is so important. It's the most important thing to me, relationships and connectivity.
Yeah, so, and then if we look at those needs, invariably they come from our unmet needs as children. You know, so then we can start saying, well, where did we not have stillness at home, that now you feel like you need stillness in order to feel connection? Where did we not receive nurturance? Where did we not, our needs for comfort and to be heard, our needs to be express ourselves as children weren't available. So then it then becomes your responsibility, because you are now your adult, to meet your needs that weren't met for your inner younger self, your inner child. And when we start doing inner child work, it's hard stuff, it's hard medicine, it's hard work. And when we then meet the needs for our inner child, our feelings begin to change. which then changes our behavior.
Sure.
But it requires work, a lot of self-discovery. It requires a lot of self-awareness. And again, we need someone to be prompting us and help us to ask the right questions. How do you feel?
Yeah.
Is the space around you safe enough for you to be honest in how you feel? And then it's to say, well, what do you need? And how can those needs be met? And a lot of us, there's a general theme. It's quite common. We all pretty much need the same thing that we didn't get when we were younger. That's led us to feel a certain way and behave a certain way, and that forms our narrative.
Yeah. Sure.
It's
crazy.
So a lot of the work that I started then doing, turned into more healing work as opposed to prescribing diets.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the clients that I had preferred the healing work, preferred learning about themselves, preferred the journey of knowing themselves. And knowing yourself allows you to make choices that are right for yourself versus being switched off and just cruising through life. So yeah, then that's when
peace.
I opened moment of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when I decided that I didn't want to practice anymore as a registered dietitian. I didn't want to be telling people what to eat when I can see there is so much going on so many levels. This person is hurting, they are in pain, they are suffering on a spiritual, emotional, and mental level. Honestly, giving them a diet is not going to support this person. It's kind of, I wanted to work on the internal landscape instead of giving them another external band-aid for an internal gunshot wound, basically. Yeah.
Sure. And that led you to where you are. And this is where, like some of the stuff you do it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. Like one of the things, the video that I saw that prompted the reconnect was you were speaking about dragons, like your inner dragon.
Yes.
Or, or what exactly was that about? Because I'm sure like from the outside, I was like, what,
Chicks lost their mind.
But it was more of curiosity because I remember like at some point I saw on Facebook that, you were into the fitness and you had like your personal training business. And then I went back to that same page afterwards to see, and then I'd seen all of this and I was like, well, this is fascinating. But a lot of it also resonated with me because as much as I believe diet's important and what you eat affects a lot of like the way our body functions and etc. But my problems and issues would go beyond just my diet. There was a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Like I had a really great childhood. I think this is what messes me up is that my parents were absolutely incredible. Apart from the things of not openly communicating, but I had such a good childhood. And when I look back I almost have like childhood guilt because I look back at some of the stuff other people went through. And I'm like, my childhood was vanilla, like I feel like a brat. And then that messed with me because I'm like, I feel guilty for having a good childhood and that messed me up. It's like, it's so hard being a parent because where do you draw the line? Like if you neglect your child, they messed up. If you give them too much love, it messes them up. Like where do you draw the line?
Yes.
So when I saw the dragon video, as much as I was like, okay, something is different. And I watched it, and it was just after I watched Game of Thrones for the first time. I only watched Game of Thrones for the first time during lockdown last year. My wife and I eventually said, the hype's down, let's see what it's about.
Get on it.
And obviously, like we've watched it a few times since. And obviously the physical dragon in the show and the majestic nature of it. And then I was like, I saw your video and I'm like, well, this is interesting. What is this about? So what is that about when you're speaking about, the dragon medicine and dragon shamanism itself?
Yes. So it came through for me a few years ago, so maybe about 4 years, 5 years now, that, so people connect, when you're doing this work, and when we talk about shamanism, we actually speaking about someone who is connected to this physical world, has one foot in this world and one foot in the world of spirit, and they're able to navigate and bring forth information and create change in this physical reality. And indigenous cultures, had their shaman as their medicine person and their healer that they went to, that could see what was happening on other levels to bring healing and change on this physical level. And many of us have the shaman archetype, I'm going to call that this ability to navigate using our intuition, what's right for us. And it was about 4 or 5 years ago. I loved dragons as a child. I loved dinosaurs. I used to watch dragon movies over and over, and obsessed completely. And I never thought it was a thing, I just was like, oh yeah, man, that's cool. And I was in a meditation one day that the dragon appeared. And I was just like, what? Because also working in the realm of spirit, we have some people connect with angels and have guidance from that. Some people work with guides. Some people work with unicorns or fairies or elves. So it's a type of energy that is there, that is available, and it just depends on, I guess, what you're wanting to achieve or what you're bringing through. That the healing work that you want to bring through, that medicine or that energy is available. So it became very clear to me at that point that is an energy that I resonate with very strongly, and it's an energy that comes through me very easily, and it's it's extremely powerful. It's very protective, and it's an energy that's coming in a lot in terms of consciousness at this time. So we've got, and that's thanks to Game of Thrones, to movies like How to Train Your Dragon or Peter and his Dragon. So yes, dragon heart, or you can go to Woolies and buy dragon eggs. So the consciousness of the dragon is very much present and coming through, and a lot of people are connecting to them. And the reason for that is dragons are very much, obviously they're a mythological creature, and they have very powerful healing abilities and are alchemists. They transform and they transmute things from one state into another, and are very powerful creators. They make things happen. Their energy is very manifesting, creative, and also very protective and very clearing, transforming the old into something new. So as I've been working with this now for, like I said, 4 or 5 years, and what I've learned through this time is that the dragon is the energy of the dragon is very connected to the heart. And as we start learning more about dragons, they hold a beautiful frequency of joy, of abundance, of lightness, well-being. They're very playful. So it's also, by that consciousness coming in, it's asking us to also access more of that within us, playfulness, to start being more youthful, to stop taking life so seriously, and to be out in nature and play and feel and allow ourselves to experience joy. So my journey is very much moved along that way to work with the dragon to help a lot of heart-centered issues. And yeah, I guess that's one thing that I also work with a lot is helping people to connect to their own personal dragon. So each of us have guides and helpers in the unseen realms. And yeah, those that want to and are open to the medicine of the dragon and the healing that it brings. I've noticed that a lot of the work that I've done helps bring through those dragons for those people. And then they build a relationship with them on their own ways and own yeah.
So they're connecting
So
to
again,
this. Is it like a spirit animal? Would you say?
Yeah.
Is it like,
yeah.
It's basically something that you see yourself when you look at a specific animal. You kind of see yourself through that animal. Like for me, I guess it's not a mythological being, but for me it'll be like a wolf, right? When I see wolves, I get incredibly excited. Like I find calm and peace. There's something about them that I find so majestic that I'm just so drawn to them as creatures, I just think they're like misunderstood. There's this kind of like a majesticness to them. There's a real power, you know what I mean? So like when you talk about drawing and from a particular animal, the energy
qualities.
And the qualities, like it makes so much sense when when it's about context, right? It's all context, like understanding where it's coming from. And I think a lot of people, this is for me one of the things in life is I find that a lot of people have these thoughts, these feelings, these processes, these energies within them, but everyone feels like I'm not going to talk about it because it's weird. People have this thing of, if I talk about this, people are going to be like, yeah, no, this person is not lacquer. But so many people, this is why self-help books and this type of, the work you do is so important, because when you speak, people, they relate to it, and then they like, okay, it's a safe space because I could not agree with what you're saying more. And then they're able to adapt and able to feel so safe and comfortable around it. And that's what it is. Like so many of us, I mean, I can guarantee a lot of people when they hear this would be like, that makes sense. I identify with a leopard or a cheetah or a sheep. And it's not necessarily like the bad connotations of, oh, I'm a follower because I identify with a sheep. It's like, no, it's everything else about what makes a sheep. It brings warmth to the world. They provide wool. It's like, it's that sort of thing that I believe this.
Yeah. So when we speak about that, that's where the term we refer to as, wolf medicine or sheep medicine or dragon medicine. The medicine, we're not talking about obviously pharmaceuticals. We're talking about the healing that comes from relating or having that animal as a guide or having that medicine available to work with. So when I speak about dragon medicine, it's the healing that can come from working with the dragon, having a connection to the dragon, and it's very much that. And what's really important for us is that we need to reconnect to the medicine that is available to us through nature. So earth is a medicine, flowers offer medicine, air, wind, water, fire, all of it offers medicine, which is healing to different aspects of us. And that's one thing that I really love about the dragon, because it's the embodiment of all things, because the dragon is this primordial creative energy, which then allows us to tap into our own authentic healing in whichever way that we need to. And obviously working with dragon fire and the energy of fire allows things to be cleansed, transmuted, transformed, because we're looking at what the element of fire does, the qualities that fire holds. Fire can be activating, it can, and it's very cleansing, and it happens quickly. So working with a dragon speeds processes up a lot quicker. So it's very much just holding the space for the dragon medicine to come through, and just allowing people to experience it in whichever way they feel they need to. I get a lot of messages, even if I haven't said to someone, okay, we're doing a meditation and we're going to meet your dragon. I have a lot of people that have worked with me, and then afterwards they were like, oh my gosh, something weird happened, there was a dragon. So I think I'm still learning so much about it, because it's a very old medicine. It's very ancient. I think a lot of different healing modalities and energies and alchemy have originally been taught through the dragon as its primary source. And I just think it's really beautiful for people to be able to experience that when and if they need it.
Absolutely, because that's the thing. We're moving into a space where it's so important for us to go back to our natural roots, like the things that we relied on most. I mean, we've been plugging our bodies away, and don't get me wrong, like science and medicine has been incredible. It does a lot of great things, but it also has the ability to do a lot of really shitty things and be very destructive and very toxic. You know what I mean? Because the first thing, like when you were talking about, you had a headache and you took like 6 Panados. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if I felt a certain way, I'd be like, yes, I'm going to take 4 Myprodols. You know what I mean? When I had a pain in my back. And then I realized that going for a walk or doing some stretching or just like eating something that decreases inflammation in my body did more for me in the long term than the quick fix, because that's what we're about, right? We're all about quick fixes. How can I get rid of this pain as quickly as possible so I can get back to my rat race of a life? And I think this is why I love so much what you do, and when you speak about it, because it makes sense. Like, save the medicine for when we really need it. Like, let it work through cancer. Let it help work through diabetes. Like, let it help work through severe mental health issues. And let's not plague our bodies, because that stuff with things that we can fix naturally or holistically or in a different manner, like, because effectively that messes with everything, right? You take 4 Myprodols, it messes with your hormones, your levels, everything gets messed up. It messes with so much more, like in the long term. And maybe that's the problem, is that we're thinking long term all the time. Like the other day, I caught myself thinking about retirement and am I going to have enough money when I retire? And I stopped for a while and I thought to myself, I'm like, really? In this day and age where so much can happen. I mean, just a month ago, we were literally hiding for our lives, afraid if we were going to get burnt down because of the unrest and everything that happened, like packing emergency bags and thinking about the things that what we will grab if we have to, leave our houses. And we forget so quickly about the things that we experience and the lessons they teach us at that time. Because as soon as we have a hint of normality, we go back to our old ways. And thinking about things like retirement, like, to be honest, I could not give a shit actually about how much money I have in retirement. Yes, when I get there, I probably will regret it. But in my mind, I'm like, do I even want to live that long? Like, I actually want to wake up, enjoy life every day. And I read somewhere about, I would rather have 3 to 5 meaningful years where I was happy and content than have 50 years of things I regret or I should have done or should
Yes.
have been doing, or like I say to myself, and sometimes the people I work with, like when we die, because we work in digital, like we're not on our deathbed, we're not going to be worried about whether we sent a particular tweet out in time. You're going to start thinking about, I should have connected with people more, or spend more time with family, or got a pet, or you know what I mean. And I think in a modern world, it's so difficult to kind of control what we're exposed to because of technology, and we're in the age of convenience, and we're all guilty of it. But I think what's the message that I get from a lot of your stuff is that what we can control as a person, we should, like, let's tap into that. Let's find that balance. Like in a world, we can't escape the things of, you need money to buy food to be less stressed. Like, it's a fact. It's a need. It's not a want. You need money.
Yeah.
You need those things, right? Those are the things that we can't control, but the things we can control is how we prepare ourselves for how we react and how we adapt to those situations. So that balance, let everything that we need in society, not want, let that be here, and let's find the balance with us as individuals from a holistic point of view, through mindfulness and through our bodies and through our hearts, you know what I mean? And let's not rely on external stimuli to also bring us happiness. Don't rely on buying a Ferrari on your happiness. Like, let work be a means to put food on your table, but what you do to be happy shouldn't be controlled by the same means. There should be different things. And tapping into ourselves.
You're speaking into a lot of important things that hold a lot of depth, and one thing that has occurred to me, through doing this work, and through reading a lot of books and connecting to different things, and different people and experiences, is that one thing that, if you want to say, our soul or our spirit remembers or engages with the most is how we have felt through life. So, sometimes doing work with people that are crossing over and are passing on is, like you say, they don't say, oh, it was amazing because I built a multi-million-dollar business. They say, it was actually quite sad, or I'm sorry I didn't forgive that person. Or it always boils down to how you feel. And I think that's always, if I ever get distracted with my work or whatever I'm doing, is that I always remember that is the most important thing that we have in this life is how we feel. The thing that we remember, the thing that we carry, is how we feel. And that can again be determined by many different things. So you spoke about illness and medication, and I just wanted to tap in here and say that there's a very big difference between cure and heal.
Okay.
So curing is very much you taking your microdose for your back. Healing is going to the medicine person and saying, why is my back sore?
Yes.
What is happening in my body, in my heart, in my spirit, in my mind, that is making my body show me that I have pain somewhere? There is something happening in my subconscious, because the body is a representation of what is happening in the subconscious mind. So if we've got illness and shit's not working, that means that there's stuff in the back there, beliefs, narratives, conditioning, programs about how you see life, how you respond to life, that isn't working for you.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately, you know, a lot of the work that I do is I'm the mediator between you and your body.
Sure.
So your body's speaking, your body's saying, I'm in pain, and our society and our culture focuses on numbing stuff out, painkiller, numb the pain, but pain is communication.
What's that thing? Pain
Pain-
deserves to be felt. What's that saying?
Yes.
Is that like from a movie? It is. I think it's from, well, it's from Perks of Being a Wallflower. I think pain deserves to be felt.
Yeah, you know, and pain gives us a really good indication that there is disharmony in the body and in the spirit. And that's where the word disease comes from, dis-ease. Something in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit, in my body is not feeling easy.
Sure.
So, you know, that's, you know, we look at Western medicine and pharmaceuticals, and it's really great for diagnostics and, you know, for helping us find what the problem is. So like, for example, if you get bitten by a snake, you need to go to the hospital and get the treatment. You know, you have to. But what's really important for you is to have the self-awareness to then go to your medicine person and say, why did I get bitten by the snake?
Sure.
That's where the two things need to meet. That's where the holistic approach needs to meet each other, is to say, yes, this is what's wrong, and this is the treatment that I may need, but what is actually happening here? Why do I have this?
Yeah. Wow.
So I think, you know, that's really, really, really important for people really, it's okay to ask the questions. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to simply, you know, why do some people get some things and other people not? Something is happening in the body and in the spirit. And it's okay for us to be curious and ask why, and then to go in, you know, healing the wounds, not just putting a band-aid of microdol over it. It's to say, actually, what is the wounding of the migraine?
And I love what you said,
So,
like that
so
really
so that's very much
resonated, was the thing of the difference between healing and the cure, which is really, I think, like such a very profound moment for me, like as well in this conversation, is that it's because we think of it as the same thing, like most days, right? Like, I'm healed, I'm cured. It's not. It's like healed is you're okay for now, but it could come back. But cured means it's completely eradicated. And that's such a subtle but powerful difference between the two words, which I think I never realized until right now.
And healing, you know, allows us to go to the root of the problem, you know, deep down, deep within the body. You know, what is the story you keep telling yourself that you believe is making you sick? And we need to just pull that root out, and you need to start telling yourself a new story, because, you know, there are many different truths, and sometimes what we believe is not necessarily the truth.
The truth,
Yeah.
Sure. Ash, I think you have got something really special. And I think that it's something that's going to become even more pivotal in not just society, but just in how human development and how humans look to the future and how we actually survive, you know, because at the rate we're going, we're not going to survive. I mean, the amount of stress and the amount of concern and worry and the amount of pain that's resonating throughout the world right now, you know, and to bring it closer, it's not even just throughout the world, it's like personally. I mean, I opened up about things that I didn't even know I needed to open up about to you. I mean, my wife and I talk about stuff all the time. It's one of our very important things. And going back to the thing of how earlier in the discussion where she grew up in a very open and very open communication based household. And we communicated growing up, but not about the things that we were feeling. And she's taught me to speak about that more often. And I think I'm like that with people when I'm one-on-one with them. I did a lot of it when I was at varsity. I became very close to people because of my ability to connect with people on a deep level. So at home, I mean, we speak about it, but it's easy to get caught in the thing of and think that, okay, cool, we're there for each other, we understand each other. But when you're having a conversation with someone like you, it's a true understanding of that not only cements what you were thinking, but it actually helps you formulate action, a way of moving forward and finding comfort just in hearing someone say it, So I think like what you do is going to be so important. And I think I'm really hoping that more people will contact you and start to like understand it, even if it's not now, but while they digest stuff, and go out there. So, like, what sort of books can people, apart from ideally, I want them to come to you. I want people to be able to come to you. No, straight up. I mean, honestly, I want people to come to you and be able to open up and speak about it and tap into it. But the reality is not everyone eases straight into things. Some people want to do their research first. They want to look into it. So, and what are some of the resources people, I mean, you send out a newsletter, so I'd love for people to go and check out, subscribe to that, go to your website, ashleigh-jayne.co.za. But in the meantime, while some people may process it, what are some of the tools and like some of the books or resources people can take a look at that maybe helped you along the way in your journey?
So one thing that's just coming through for me now that's is important to tell people, and again, it's about that connection to nature, is that there are certain aspects to our whole being that we can use different elements of nature to support our healing. So our body is directly linked to the earth. So when we are feeling discomfort, pain, whatever in our physical body, go to the earth, go to places in nature where there's earth, lie with your body on the earth itself. When you are feeling emotional discomfort or dis-ease or struggling with things emotionally, you go to the water. Go be near water, bath, shower, swim, be with a lot of water. When you are feeling discomfort in your mind, or your mind is, all scattered and all over the place, that's the element of air is connected to the mind. So go be outside, get fresh air, breathe, take deep breaths. We spoke about that earlier. Let the wind blow your face. Let the wind, take your worries. And when you are feeling discomfort in your spirit, that is when we go to the fire. So you take your dis-ease and discomfort that's in your spirit, and you maybe light a candle, offer prayers, offer blessings, make a fire, throw in your worries with a log or dried herbs and stuff. So again, it's really important. We have everything that we need to support and heal ourselves around us. And one of the strong messages, like I said, that was coming through that I needed to share with you and tell you is that when we connect to the different elements of nature, we are able to heal ourselves. All of us have the ability to heal ourselves if we connect to these things. So the earth is connected to our body. The water is connected to our heart and our emotions. The air or wind is connected to our mind and our mentality. And the fire is connected to our spirit. So whenever we are feeling whatever, rattled in any of those areas, go to nature for that healing. And then in terms of resources and books, wow, I've read so many things. But the main one that is coming up for me to share with you today is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And yeah, he speaks a lot about the consciousness of and the subconscious, and how, because ultimately that's what we are doing. We are creating a new earth. And a new earth doesn't necessarily mean the planet is going to be changing. We are the new earth.
Yeah.
We are the new earth by raising our awareness, by raising our consciousness, by choosing kindness and love over fear and panic. So yeah, his book speaks a lot about many different things, and how to just be more aware and more awake in yourself and your relation to others and your relation to the planet. You know, what we're getting pushed to do at the moment is take care of our homes, and our homes are the earth. And that's, you know, very, very important personally to me, you know, to honor the earth and care for our planet that unconditionally sustains us through all things that we do. So yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Ash, I think,
Cool.
you're a super special person. It's
Thank
been
you.
absolutely incredible catching up, and just knowing you, knowing your story. I learned so much more about you as a person, about what you do, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to just catch up. And I think what you're doing is special. I think you're super special, and I've got so much love and respect for you. And I really hope that, you know, in your journey you continue to heal and to really help people find, you know, in themselves, and also find in yourself what brings you happiness and joy. And yeah, people, you can go to Ashleigh-Jayne, that's ASHLEIGHJAYNE.co.za, to find out more information, and they can connect you there. But I think, I can't wait. There's so much more that we can tap into, and I want to do that at a later stage, especially with the ceremonies that you do and stuff. So we'll definitely get back into that at some point. But given a lot of people a lot of things to think about, and
Good.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing, Preneil. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the questions, and also thank you for creating this safe space and the safe container that we could chat about all these things on all these levels.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Cool.
I'll chat to you soon, and take care. Don't get COVID again.
Again. Bye.
Cheers, Ash.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, guys. Catch you soon. Cheers.